straight. Straight. Okay, I was confused if you were eating it like that, and then I never made you see that people.
Yeah, they eat people. For the information.
I must say, their homeworld is called Pack, which I can't tell is just a really bad GW name for, effectively birds.
Could be. Little hungry, little package.
But the groups are obviously a little bit more alien. They have 4 digits on each hand and foot, and almost a kind of hollowish bone structure. The skin is very rough and has those barbed spines kind of across it, both on their body and their head. If you look at their legs, you can see some of the spines that poke out a little bit. In here. Then, of course, they have their color is between brown and green and everything kind of in between, with tons of tribal markings generally surrounding them. They also have exceptionally dense muscle structures. So despite how they look kind of gangly, they're actually stronger physically than most human soldiers.
Because it's just all muscle. It's just all really get some muscle in there, even though it's a little in the side.
Yeah, for the most part, if you see a guy who's pretty fit, you assume that they're also pretty strong. But you also see it also kind of goes with diet. You see those Shaolin monks and stuff, or just really strong lead guys, but they look kind of small. But they're freaks like skinnies. So they're a lot more dense. The muscle structure is really dense. In fact, they often have these really quick muscle contractions, so their strength of the punches are almost like straight over. And
So they got like a 1-inch punch.
Yeah, kind of like they punch and jump really well because they almost have that spring-loaded muscles.
So you don't want to get in a fist fight with a group.
No, a group will actually do pretty well against the general enemy. You just saw a cat trooper in practice. That was higher than Starkin, so he's a little different.
He's above and beyond. Even a cat.
Yeah, whenever I think of like regular guardsmen, I think of like a pretty buff Canadian guy. And for the most part, yeah, I could probably take them pretty well. They're quite strong.
So they're cool. The blade on the end of it, the long gun with the blade on the end of it. Love that.
I wonder if it had any inspiration from the Tusken Warriors and Star Wars. The gun looks very similar. A little long version of it.
Yeah, it kind of does, doesn't it?
Can you make a Tusken Warrior yell?
I mean, I could probably try, but I don't.
That's perfectly fine. Do it long enough.
It's gonna be a sound like play.
Anyway, the thing with the gangle that you see there, it's actually a sensory organ. And so it kind of like, feels gather information around the environment. And their eyes actually have little pupils and are pretty like a milky color, which allows them to generally see past the infrared spectrum, which is one of the reasons why creators really enjoy concerts. They see everything and their sensory apparatus ganglion and that is extremely handy.
I was gonna say, having infrared vision is a big plus in combat. Like, that's huge by itself, let alone having little barbs that can do all the extra sensory nonsense. That's probably really hard to hide from crew.
Now, the recruits generally, the thing you always think, when you look at the recruits, you think of the fact that they evolved by consuming the flesh of other races. The process itself is called shaping, which is actually coming up in the tabletop. The leader of the recruit is called recruit shaper, instead of sergeant and shaper, because they are the ones who are really good at dealing with what traits are desirable to be consumed for the maximum genetic potential.
Oh, well, that's cool. So they know what to do.
Yes, they know exactly what is good and what's bad. And I believe in the Caiaphas Pain book, you will remember one of those who ate a dead human and then spit it out because it was tainted, because it was nasty and poison.
Okay. And that's how they found out about the cult.
Yes, that's kind of how they figured it all out. I mean, Jurgen took a melted gun and destroyed the picture.
That smelly pile of garbage. What a good man.
Jurgen's looking at it. But Tricloser there on the right, those are various species of fruit.